There are a couple of ways that you could painted your wheel wells. You could have painted them first and then masked, or you could paint the bottom like I have and then take the mask and use it on the 76. And I'm going to show you how I could do that right now. I basically just take my tape, lay it down over my wheel well, make sure I get a nice ridge built in there. Then I just take a new blade and very carefully cut the tape. Don't cut the plastic, but if you do this properly, it's a lot faster than doing it the other way. Now that we have that one, we'll just repeat the process all the way down the wheel well. Place your second piece of tape and work all the way back to the entire wheel well. Make sure it's tight up against the wall, and then using your tweezers, keep the tape taut, and keep repeating the process. Again, back up against the cannon. Very important. Check this one. And everything looks good. Paint the wheel Gunsy tire black. Then, using a circle template, I paint the rim front and back a gloss black. Take our toothpick, get a little bit on there. This is called a slippage mark. These tires were tube tied, and because they're tube, the rim and the wheel has to have a mark for reference to see if the rim has slipped with the rubber tire inside. Just a little touch of realism. Okay. Using some proportional dividers, we'll check how wide that is, transfer those measurements to some bare metal foil, and all I'm going to do is make a couple dots. Then I'm going to line everything up using a number 11 X-Acto blade. Cut a new line. This line's not as important, so we're just going to cut it. Peel up the bare metal foil. We're going to place the bare metal foil on the strut and rub it down. Go slow. Take your time. Work it all the way over. That line just disappears. Use the corner just to make sure everything's tight up top and tight on the bottom. That should work just fine. Time to add the wheels to the strut. Basically, if you do it right, it's really tight. And if you work it slow and twist the wheel around, it'll screw itself onto the strut. And then it's ready to install on the airplane. Then we're going to add the other strut. We're going to add a little bit of glue to that one. A little on the back side. And just a little bit on the front side. Alright. Now if I hold this, I'll check, make sure everybody's in the same line. I'm going to check it for alignment. The wheel should disappear at the same time as I look over the wing. You'll notice that as I rotate the model, both wheels become visible over the wing at the same time. Then, I recheck the side profile to ensure that they are still aligned. After checking the front profile, carefully put the model aside on its back until the landing gear dries completely in about 6 hours. Gonna add the tail wheel. Just push it in right good and tight. Check the alignment. Check that it sets flush, which it's not at the moment. Oh, we got an issue. Here we go. Add some liquid cement to the two mounting stubs on the inside flap. Slide the lower flap in. You may need to add a little extra glue, especially to the joint for strength. Tweak it as necessary. And when you're happy, set it aside. With my proportional dividers, I check that the opening between the top and the bottom flaps is the same on both sides. Then, using the same technique as I did on the wheels, rotate the model to verify alignment. While the flaps are drying, we're going to go ahead and work on the landing gears. Place a drop of liquid cement on the stubs on the strut, as well as on the holes on the gear door. What this does is it melts some plastic, allowing the parts to be joined. Place the door on the strut and check for alignment, as we did before. You may have to adjust it a little bit, and you may need to add a little bit of glue. Just should have a slight indent to the front. Verify alignment between each wheel, and then check the alignment from the front. The same amount of door should be visible from both sides. One thing we have to do is reopen up this hole here. It's a drain hole for the oil tank. I'm using a number 60 drill bit, and I'm not drilling all the way through. I'm just taking it down so it's nice and circular. I'm not worried about painting it because we're going to weather it later. That should be good. Now it looks like a circle. I like to add my guns before I gloss coat. I've already painted them a gun metal. Now I'm using a dry brush that has silver paint on it. And all this does is bring out the highlights and makes them look very metallic. Then we've got the oil cooler, at least the front of it. I've painted it dark, and all we're going to do is add just a little bit of silver dry brushing around the outside of it. I've previously drilled out the front of the barrels. Now I'm just going to go ahead and dip the tail end of the gun into some super glue very carefully. Place it into the model till it hits the stop. Check it, make sure that it's aligned and sitting in the gun trough. And bring it in at an angle. And push it back. You got to look at it from the front to make sure the guns are pointing at you. Just going to put that in. And done. Alright, now we're going to start painting our spiral. We previously painted the spinner white, including all the pre-shading. I'm going to cut a couple of masks here. Alright. Using the first one, just going to lay it right up against the gun muzzle. Push it on up there. Now, this you have check your references, but our aircraft, it's hard to see the spinner, so we get a little bit of artistic license here. So we're going to put a spiral in here where everybody's is even. And all I'm going to do is put it down and keep pulling it. Alright. The hardest part of this whole thing is to make it stay circular. Alright. Right there. Don't worry, we're going to come back and touch things up. We're just getting a rough outline of how we want our spiral to look. Alright. Just keep on going until you run out of spiral. Then go back to the top where you got a really hard join right there, or a hard angle. Go ahead and work it back out so that it stays circular. Look at it from the front and then just work it around. You can see a little bit of tightness right there. Alright, but then you can see it goes all the way around. Now I realize now, after looking at it, that I've had that angle too sharp right there. So I'll bring it back around, go around some more. Bring it around. Disappears. Alright. That looks much nicer. You don't have to be perfectly circular, because you got to remember they were made in the field. The spiral was not something that was applied at the factory. So the spirals varied greatly from aircraft to aircraft in the same unit. It was all the mechanic who ended up having to paint it. These spirals could be white. I've seen a yellow one painted on a red spinner. So, but the most common is obviously white. Because it is masking tape, I can maneuver it around where I need it to. Now, again, using proportional dividers, I'm making sure that all my spirals are fairly close together. They don't have to be exact, but they should be fairly close. Move it around some more as you need it to get the proper spacing that you're after. Our spiral is pretty tight, so I need to make sure that the area is small. Now that I'm happy with it, check everything one final time, and then we're going to add a liquid masking agent. The liquid mask is tinted so that you can see where it goes. So you want to put it on over top of the masking tape so that no paint gets underneath it, but you want to make sure that it stays off the surface that you want to paint. You can see I'm using the big brush, so it's not like it's really hard. If it does get someplace where you don't want it, just let it dry, then you can cut it and peel it up as you need to. Now that we've got everything done, we've got our final touch-up on, we'll check everything out and get prepared to paint the spinner gloss black. Once the liquid mask is dried in about 10 minutes, go ahead and spray some Tamiya gloss black over the entire spinner. Make sure you get good coverage, but you want to put it down in dry coats and not a really heavy wet coat. Now, peel it up. The masking tape should pull up the liquid mask. Now, we can see we got a little bit of creep up here in the apex of the spiral. That's kind of normal, but we're going to clean that up before it dries too much. Going to go ahead and use a hobby knife to clean up the edges. We're going to be careful because remember we're scraping on painted surface. And the other thing we can use is we can use a toothpick to round everything out. You want to do this before it dries and sets up completely. And now you can see we have a beautiful spiral. It's not perfect, but neither was the real thing. Now it's time to gloss coat the model. We're going to use Future Floor Wax as our gloss coat, and we're going to cut it with some Windex. So these are the only two products that you actually need to gloss coat your model. So with that, let's get started. We're going to go ahead and just add the Future 100% without cutting it with anything, just to the paint cup. Make sure you put your cap on. You're going to just go spray the Future just as you would any other color from front to back. It's not that important to get 100% coverage on the entire model, although it is nice to blend everything together with the Future. But it is essential that wherever you're going to put the decals, that you make sure you have a nice glossy surface. Better to build up slow than to put one big glob down. If you put one big glob down, it's just going to run, and that's going to ruin your model. You'll notice I applied my gloss right to here. Down here is glossy, and up here is flat. This is the kind of sheen you're looking for throughout the model. Your decals will adhere well to that. So we've got to clean up our airbrush. All we're going to do is squirt in some Windex and operate the airbrush normally. Taking a tissue, we're going to go ahead and place it on the end. Get some blowback in there. This will ensure that you remove all the future from your brush. But you might want to give it a good cleaning when you're done. Another thing to do is when you're done with the Windex, or you shot all of it out, go ahead and throw some solvent through there. While we wait for the future to dry, we're going to go ahead and paint our exhausts. We're going to use Model Master burnt metal and some pastels. This is the first time we've played with pastels, so we'll talk about them as we get used to them. Let me go ahead and mix up my paint. The Model Master paint needs to be mixed thoroughly by stirring or by shaking, but shaking will definitely allow all the medium inside of the paint to mix evenly. We just need a little bit for the airbrush. And make sure we put our top on. There's a rib or a mold line on each of these exhaust stacks. You don't want to do anything with that. Normally you would remove it, but on exhaust stacks they're actually cast that way. And don't forget to paint the exhaust shields. Now we're going to work with the pastels. We're going to start with a darker color of a brown, and then we'll work our way up with an orange and finally a yellow. I'm going to do it on the exhaust shield first just because it'll be easier to see. Some people have you scrape off the pastel onto a paper. I prefer just to go ahead and rub my cotton swab on it, get it built up on my cotton swab, and then just roll it along. The thing about the metalizer is it's a buffable type, which means it gets shiny as you buff it. But the other thing is with the pastels, it also changes the shade. That's highly desirable. You can see that it looks brown and rusty now. We're going to go ahead and make it a little bit lighter and add some variety by putting on the orange. And then finally we're going to use a little bit of yellow. That brightens everything up just a bit. And there you can see we have a nice looking exhaust shield. Now if you want it darker, no problem. Just go back with your brown and just touch it up just a little bit. Now we'll repeat that process for the exhaust stacks and the other exhaust shield. Now we're going to come to the part that most modelers dread, clear. I'm going to show you how I remove clear plastic from the sprue, and we're going to use Blackmagic masks to mask up this canopy. You're going to need a tea candle, and you're also going to need a lighter. So make sure all your flammables are locked up or closed up. Go ahead and get your tea candle lit. Take your number 11 X-Acto blade and place it into the flame. It's going to change color a little bit. Don't worry about it. This is the only time you're going to use this blade. Once you get it hot, bring it over to your part and just slice straight down. If it doesn't go through the first time, go back, get the knife blade hot again, and try again. Now just using a knife blade, clean the part up normally. Just going to use the sandpaper here a little bit. And we use slightly more on this one. Now we're ready to apply the masks. We're going to be using Blackmagic masks available from Meteor Productions to make the whole process of masking the canopies a whole lot easier. Basically, all you're going to do is remove the part from the black area, stick it to the palm of your hand once or twice. This removes some of the stickiness. Then all you're going to do is line up your corners, put the mask in place. And you repeat that process for the whole canopy. Again, put it in your palm, press it, pull it up, boom. Again, in the palm of my hand, press it into place. There, we've just masked that canopy completely in less than a minute. Repeat the process for the rest of the canopy parts. Masking tape is used to protect the inside of the canopies. Make sure the tape is pressed down, especially on the ends, to get a good seal. The 109 had an internal brace for the antenna mast. Blackmagic provides a special mask for the inside part of the canopy. This is the only part of the inside canopy you're going to paint. This whole set here took us less than 5 minutes from start to finish, and it's ready to paint right now. We're going to play a little trick on our eyes. We got to paint the interior color first. You can look through the canopy and you'll see that darker color, and your eye will say that it's supposed to be there. It's a lot better than painting the inside of the canopy because of the refraction of light that goes through it. It would make it very difficult to get it proper alignment with the actual outside colors. So with that said, we're going to go ahead. I've already pre-mixed some RLM 66, which is our interior color. Now we're just going to paint the interior of the canopy. I'll paint the RLM 66 on all unmasked portions of the canopy, especially the edges. It's better to build it up slowly than all at one time. You don't want it to go flooding onto the masks. Even though the masks are good and they're holding and they're all down, if you flood too much paint on there, there's a chance that the paint will creep up underneath your mask, thereby ruining your clear part. Alright, here's one spot where we have to paint the inside, and this is an internal brace, but Cutting Edge provides you a decal or a mask for that, so it's not a big issue. Once you're done using all the masks on this Blackmagic film, you can go ahead and use all this stuff out here that's uncut for any kind of masking duties on your model. Now we're just going to add our upper surface color, or outside color. In this case it's RLM 74, and that goes along with our camouflage pattern. You'll notice this one I put on a little bit wetter than the other coat, and that's because we formed a barrier already with our previous coat of paint. And here are all our external parts ready to have the masks removed. We'll go ahead and start with this one. Be very careful, grab a corner without scratching it. Pull back slowly, and there you can see a perfectly masked window. Here are the canopy sections. They're perfectly painted with RLM 66 showing through on the inside and RLM 74 on the outside. We're going to go ahead and install this front armored windscreen. Going to put it in the canopy. Make sure it's centered. I'm going to apply a little bit of Future around the bottom of it. This will seal it into place. And if any of it comes out or extrudes, then you shouldn't have any problem whatsoever, because it'll be crystal clear. There it is. I can see it coming up through the top now. I doubt if that'll come out of there at all. With our clear coat dry, it's time to add some markings to the aircraft. I've selected this Eagle Editions decal sheet, which includes two separate sheets, one with the individual aircraft markings and one with the stencils that are required for the aircraft. These are markedly thinner and in better register than the ones that come with the kit. However, the kit decals are still usable and very friendly. We're going to go ahead and do our JG-77 airplane, and in front of me I've got all the tools that you're going to need to do decals. You're going to need scissors to remove the decal from the sheet, tweezers to hold your decals while you work with them, a toothpick to help position the decal, cotton swab to remove the excess water and setting solution, the setting solution, and 2 brushes to apply the setting solution with, and then a container for the water that you're going to be dipping the decals in. First thing we're going to remove are these wing crosses. These are the most important thing on the top of the wing, and these will tell you if you use the right technique for getting your decals down, because they've got a lot of open clear space in between the hash marks on the cross. Some people will have you cut right next to the decal to minimize the decal film, but today's modern decal manufacturers pretty much do that for you. And if you do the proper procedure, you won't have to worry about it. You may have noticed that I keep my water and my solvents on one side of my workbench, and I keep my decals on the other side of my workbench. They should never cross, because inevitably something will get spilled or a drop will form someplace. With that said, we're just going to go ahead and lower the decal into the lukewarm water. Hold it there for a couple of seconds. Pull it back out, and I set it on my bench. You'll notice that there's white spots in here. That's as the decal becomes loose, as it is now. And once that's all said and done, we'll bring the decal over to the model. Go ahead and use the micro set. Apply a thin coat. Make sure it goes into the panel lines. That's very important. And just along the whole location where the decal is going to set. Bring a decal in. Use your finger to loosen it up if it's not. Oop. Just hold that on there. At least till we get something down there. There we go. Hold it down with a toothpick and pull the decal off. It may be necessary to add a little bit of water to help move the decal around. It's better to use the toothpick, but you don't want to damage the decal. So occasionally you have to use cotton swab. Line it up with the panel line. And then I lightly remove most of the moisture from underneath it. Working from the center out. Once I'm happy with its placement, I use another brush and microsol and solvent and apply it to the decal. You'll notice that the decal starts to deform. That's good. It has to get into that state where it's going to actually suck down into the panel lines, and the decal will conform completely with the surface of the skin. Don't touch it at this time. Don't try to straighten it. Just leave it go. There's nothing you can do now that you've applied the solvent, short of removing the decal and replacing it. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and apply the rest of the decals with the same system. And we're going to go ahead and start with the swastika. Our next decal is unique in that it's a two-part decal. There's a white background and a black foreground. You have to put the white on first and let it set up before you put on the black. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and cut out what we need. And set up the first side. align it. Once I'm happy with the alignment, roll out the excess, move it just a little bit, not a problem. Still plenty of room to move it around. Once we're happy with it, go ahead and apply a little bit of Microsol. And let it set. Up until this point, our aircraft could be from any unit, but now we're going to go ahead and apply a unit badge or a unit marking for Von der Circus U-Bahn. This badge was applied by JG-77 to show how they were a wandering circus. They went so far as they even had a traveling circus trailer with them that the commander used. Move it down to where it sets, using a little bit of water. And once I'm happy with that, there we go. Tamp it down a little bit. And then apply the Microsol. And this aircraft now belongs to Von der Circus U-Bahn of JG-77. German national emblems underwent a transformation throughout the war. The early ones were black, with black outlines much similar to these. Mid-war tended to be black filled centers without the black on the outside. Still later ones were just white with RLM 74, such as this one here on the sheet, and still others at the late war period were cleared through the center just like the wing ones. Alright, we're going to have to move it around a bit. Because it is so big, it has a lot of surface tension. Use your finger, put a little bit of water on it. It's hard to do without. You can always use a little bit of water underneath the decal itself. That'll loosen things up. And then you can move it as necessary. Just align it with the panel lines. Apply a coat. Add our second part of the decal. For instructional purposes. We'll bring that over onto it. Now you can lift it up with the tweezers, but you got to be careful. It's better to do it with the cotton swab. This ensures that you're in register. At least that's what it is in theory. You'll notice much of the decal, especially the stenciling, is finer on the Eagle Cal sheet than it is on the kit decal. With that said, Eagle Cal gives you these wonderful wing walk areas, while Hasegawa gives you these. You can see the finer detail of these ones on the Eagle Cal sheet, but they're a solid piece of decal. What I use some proportional dividers, transfer the measurements from the kit part over to the Eagle Cal decals. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my straight edge. I'm going to cut two of these pieces vertically. Then I can just cut that decal out as I did the other decals. Then I'm also going to use my divider to get the lengthwise measurement from my cut. And again, I'm just going to transfer it over to the Eagle Cow decal. Again, using the straight edge. And just going to cut again. Now when I cut these decals out with the scissors, I'll have no problem applying them. Alright, starting at the fairing and right next to the flap, just put your, get it loose, get it right there and hold it and pull it across. That didn't turn out very straight. Now I'm adjusting it to the end. Applying a little bit of the red. Okay, now ready to do the other one. I am. A little bit more. Better have too much of that. Perfect. We'll use our straight edge. That's the way that's supposed to work. Bring it down a little bit. Alright. Now finish applying all the decals. Let them dry thoroughly for about 6 hours. Check them for defects, and if necessary, go ahead and reapply some Microsol. Once you're satisfied with the decals, apply another gloss coat. It helps seal the decals, and it also helps hide the decal film. We've let our gloss coat dry for 24 hours. Now we're going to go ahead and apply a flat coat. I use Model Master Acrylic Flat Clear, and just thin it with their thinner, and then just apply it just like you did the gloss coat. Basically all you're going to do, just apply it over everything. I like to call a flat coat the great equalizer, because bottom line, a lot of the detail that we've added into it will be so subdued it becomes very subtle. The other thing about a flat coat is it tends to change the base color just a little bit. You can see where I've flatted from the center of the cross to the outside, and then the inside of the wing isn't. You just go ahead and do the entire model that way, well, especially over the decals. With our flat coat dry of about 24 hours, we're going to go ahead and weather it. Weathering is done in progressive steps. I've laid out before me all the tools I'm going to need for weathering. We start out with artist oils. The key one is burnt umber and flat black. A little bit of Turpenoid, that's going to help flow those oils into the panel lines. We have silver brush, or silver pencils and pens. We have our brushes and cotton swabs for applying our pastels. And then finally we have some Tamiya paint that we're going to use to apply our exhaust stains with. Using Grumbacher Burnt Umber, this whole tube will last you a lifetime of modeling, so go ahead and buy something that's good, either Winsor Newton or Grumbacher. We're going to apply a little bit in the bottom of our cup. That's more than sufficient for what we're going to do. Bringing in the Turpenoid, we're going to put some at the bottom of the cup. I have a brush that I use that's its sole purpose is nothing more than mix the Turpenoid up. Try to mix everything in real well. Alright. I can see it's a little too dark, so I just add a little bit more. And again, stir that in, make sure it all works. That's much better. Going to take our brush. It's a pointed brush. It's got enough bristles to hold a little bit of thinner. And then all we're going to do is touch it to the side to see how it looks. And it should just slightly tint it. With that slight tint, we're going to go ahead and apply it to the model. Now you can apply a wash over your gloss coat or a flat coat. The thing about applying a wash over a gloss coat is it will tend to stay inside of the panel line. When you apply it over a flat coat, the majority of it's going to go into the panel line, but some of it is going to bleed out, and that's a desirable effect because it'll create an illusion of depth. Again, make sure that you apply multiple coats as opposed to one heavy coat. It's easier to hide the one light coat than it is the dark heavy coat. Let it flow in. That panel just jumps right out at you now. Always apply the wash a little bit darker in the areas of the ailerons or any of the control surfaces. And here I do want a little bit heavier. Just go ahead and touch all the panel lines. Capillary action will drive it right through the area, but it's okay to drag your brush along the panel line to ensure that you get the coverage that you want. And if you're going to have a little excess, always keep a cotton swab close at hand. Just lick it and then pull it in the direction of airflow. It does a couple things. It removes the excess, and it also creates the illusion of the airflow over the wing. Because bottom line, what you're going to end up doing is you're going to end up staining some of the paint. If it gets too dark on you, go back in your paint cup, mix it up some more, and just take it off of the top side. You may want to angle your cup a little bit more so that only the sediment falls to the bottom, and then you can use just the top, which is just the tinted Turpenoid. This line here seems to be a little bit dark for me. Again, apply a little bit of spit, drag it in the direction of flight. That removes a little bit of that starkness. Now a flat coat will take care of some of that. And actually it's desirable. Give it a couple of minutes to settle itself down. Remember, parts that get handled by the ground crew will tend to get a little bit grungy, such as this gun pod. And also, as you get closer to the center of the aircraft, it'll become more grungy just by the flow of gravity dragging all the dirt down to the center. One of the things about the 109 is because the panels are butt jointed, is the dirt would tend to accumulate here and then come back into this type fashion as the water would beat on it. So you're going to want to replicate that with every panel. And of course, as you get farther back, it gets a little bit less because there's less panel on top. That'll create a nice effect. I apply the wash pretty liberally over the wheel to simulate some of the dirt and grime that builds up there, especially in the shadows of the dust boot. You have the pre-shading as the first level of weathering. The post fade is the second and third, and now you have the wash. Now we're going to go ahead and use a variation of the wash, in that we're going to go ahead and put down just a drop of paint right where it would drip out normally. The Daimler-Benz engine was not notably clean, especially under wartime conditions. Now you're saying, well, yeah, I got these drops here. Well, between using a Q-tip, again damp, pull it back, or using a brush, you can extend it even further. Again, try to remember where the airflow is going, and that it's going to go to the center of the airframe and to the bottom like gravity has it. Bring it back. If you get too much, just go ahead and dab it up and it'll work. Just like that. Doesn't seem to work. If you need to, you can take a new brush with some clean Turpenoid and then you can thin it out that way to do what you want it to do. Again, if you need to, take a little bit of Turpenoid and you can drag some of that so that it makes it look even wetter. And more realistic. You can add a couple more. So you gotta be careful if your brush gets too wet, you'll make it go away. There it is, our initial stage of weathering. I'm going ahead and add the wash of burnt umber. I tend to overdo it a little bit just because when I apply the next coat of flat, it'll tend to become more faint. So to overdo it just a little bit, but you don't want to do it to the point that the model looks like it's rusting. This is the kit drop tank. You can see it in assembly after painting. And here's a resin drop tank available through Eagle Editions. Now you notice the resin drop tank has welded seams that the kit doesn't. It also has more detail here in the mounts and in the gas cap itself, as well as in the hanger and in the transfer tube up top here. Overall, this is superior to the kit part. The 109 is not known for a clean engine, so it would always leak oil. Well, that oil would leak down and it would hit right about in there or there, someplace on the nose of this drop tank. I've applied a little bit of ivory black and a little bit of burnt umber there. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush, and remember it's going to be sitting on the aircraft like this, and I'm just going to drag it down there. I'm going to add some more as I get it in there. Just keep dragging it in the direction that it's going to, as it sits on the ground. If you need more, feel free to go ahead and add some more in there. You can go ahead and paint it all on like that. Remember, it's dirty, grungy, grimy, black. It's going to flow down these lines a little bit. Alright, now I'll take it off of that holder, and basically it's going to flow down to that. It's just going to create a real mess. Again, using our wash from before, we'll put some in there and drag it down. When it gets to the bottom, it's just going to fall down and flat out like that. I'll add a little bit more to this side. Now this is more an artiste method to go around getting this. So you do it till you like it. You're just after the streaky look of the whole thing. That looks pretty good. Got a little bit extra on the top. A little build up on the bottom. And it flows the way it's supposed to. Let me see what it looks like when I put it up next to the aircraft. Here's our prop blade. We're going to go ahead and start with a silver pencil, Prismacolor, or a Barol very thin. I'm going to go ahead about 3/4 of the way down and just drag it towards the top. As we're doing that, we're going to go ahead and rotate the blade. The blade tends to get more worn at the end than it does at the root, and it also tends to get more worn at the tip than it does at the bottom. This is because it's closer to the ground, and all the rocks and erosion materials such as sand. Next thing I'm going to do is I've taken a brush, I've shaken up a can of, or a bottle of metallizer, and I've gone ahead and let it dry in the cap. Now all I'm doing is just dry brushing that color, the silver, onto the tip. You can see, build it up a little slowly. Better to go slow than fast. Because our aircraft operated in Sicily, the tip is going to be pretty well worn. Now, just for a little added interest, lightly streak it across. This takes a fine touch. You don't want to build it up too much, but what this will do for you, and this is across the whole blade, is once you apply the flat coat, this will give that illusion that it's been spinning. And again, right on the tip, but especially on the end. You have a blade with no wear, brand new, and then you have one that's seen the ravages of the desert. I use my pencil, my silver pencil, sharpen it pretty good, but then what I do is I go ahead and I literally tap it against the leading edge of the wing. Now it's pretty hard not to get a random pattern just by rotating your hand or the model or both. You want to put a little bit more chips in the wing area from about the wheel well in as opposed to the out because of the debris thrown up by the prop. So just keep adding a little bit more. Some pencils are a little bit softer than others. Now this is a very subtle bit of weathering. Now if you wanted to, you could go in there and actually make marks, but again that kind of takes away from the randomness of what you're trying to accomplish. And do that to both wings. For doing the paint chips on the wing root, I use a combination of silver pencil, silver pen, my dry brush, and a light gray brush, or a light gray pencil. Basically, I just take it in, move it around. It's a bit of a technique. You want to avoid any pattern, but you want to be careful and show that this is where the pilot stepped. Don't forget the hand hold, and don't forget the foothold on the bottom of the airplane, both sides. Ground crew had to come up here and notice the area that's outlined in red here. That's the area where they're allowed to step. Did that mean that they didn't step on it? No, but typically there's more where they're allowed to step going into the cockpit. For using a pen, what I do is I put a couple of drops, just move it down there. This is very shiny, very bright. Then I take a cotton swab and I roll it. Gives me a nice subtle effect there. And then also some light gray in there, because paint doesn't always have to go down to the bare metal. And again, just a little bit more in here. Again, around some panels like these access panels for the gun, the crew chief would have had to actually open these up with the screwdriver or by pressing them with his thumb, and they would get worn just by virtue of sliding the bullets in and out. Of course, the paint would wear off of the hinge. Using my brush, my dry brush from earlier, I literally press it down into the paint. And that sort of blends everything together. Again, this is going to become a little bit more muted when I apply the next flat coat to blend everything together. Also, don't forget up here on the canopy railing. We'll get that in a minute once we get the tape off. Then again, here in the handholds. Now remember, the handholds get worn in the middle and less on the outside. There, you can see that. And the same goes for the foot peg. Gets more worn in a pattern similar to that. And again, people kicking it will make some of that go away. And just for a little bit of variation, we can add a little bit of gray in there. And you can just press it up. It gives it that worn look, as if somebody had stepped on it. Alright, next we're going to use our pastels to establish the area where the exhaust streaks are going to be. Got to scrape the pastels, get a little bit going. And then dip. Basically, use your brush. And all we're going to do is lightly build it up, starting at the exhaust outlet where they're going to be once we put them on. We're going to establish the pattern that we're going to follow. Our aircraft, according to our picture, is very dirty. It's seen lots of use. Therefore, our exhaust literally goes all the way down the fuselage. Daimler-Benz is not known as being a very clean burning engine, just to the fact that the fuel used by the Germans didn't burn as clean as that by the Americans. Alright, now I at least have some visual guides for me to use all the way back here to the tail. While I got the pastels out, I'm going to go ahead and use a light yellow tan, and I'm going to add a little bit of dust to the wheels. Most of this is going to get blown off when I apply the flat coat, so it's better to go overboard. And we'll do the bottom side. I'll turn it. That adds a nice little look to it, to the tire. Gives it that worn, I've been in the desert look. Don't forget the tail wheel. These are the colors we're going to use to build up our exhaust area. A little bit of flat earth and a little bit of flat black. I'm going to use 2 drops. 1, 2 of the flat earth and 1 drop of the flat black. Now the rest of it, our color cup is going to be filled up with thinner. What I'm really after here is tinted thinner. And I'm going to add 1 more drop of flat earth just because I think it needs it. Start at the wing root. where you're close. And as you get back farther back, you pull back a little bit more. I want to make sure that it looks pretty realistic and dirty. Notice as I get back towards the back, I stay a little bit farther away. That's actually looking pretty good. That's the look that we're after. Remember, it should be darker right at the exhaust outlets. That's looking pretty good. Our aircraft actually did see a lot of service. Notice the more I build it up, the more the black starts to come out. It's looking pretty good. Let's go back and make sure that the sides are pretty even. This side needs a little bit more. Remember, because this side has got a deflector on it, its angle is a little bit less than the other side. And that it stays a little bit further down on the fuselage. I'm going to add a little bit more thinner. Actually, a lot more thinner, and one more drop of black. Alright, I'll tell you what, 2 drops of black. And then more thinner. Now we've changed the consistency and the color to a thinner and then definitely more black color. You want to keep the black focused more at the front than that flat earth and black mixture. That looks pretty realistic. Do it to both sides. Now our exhaust streaks are starting to come to life. But they're not quite done yet. We have them dark enough. Now we just need to add just one little bit of color. We're going to go ahead and take a very orange pastel. Come right out the exhaust area right there. We'll use a broader stroke brush. And it blends everything in really nice. broad brush. And if we like that, we can go ahead and add just a little bit more color in the brown side. And again on the other side, to make sure both sides are fairly even. This side probably needs just a little bit more on the wing. There. There's our exhausts. Dirty all the way to the back. Looking really nice, covers up. Remember we had a question about that? I think that's what that was some exhaust staining. And amazing how well that comes into effect. I've emptied most of the color out. Now I'm going to add a couple more drops of black. One would be sufficient for what we need. And a lot more thinner. We're now down to just a very, very tinted black. Now we're going to go ahead and paint the gun exhaust. Don't want to overdo it, but you want to give it enough so that it looks like the cordite has been used. Well, airplanes aren't always in the air. Sometimes they're anchored to the ground. And to replicate that and to make it attached to the ground, we're going to go ahead and do a little trick I learned. A couple of drops of buff. A lot of thinner. This is really thin, tinted thinner actually. And you'll notice I'm doing it in the same pattern that we've done before. And we're going across the wings in the direction of airflow. Notice I start off the model and end off the model. And just before it becomes noticeable, or extremely noticeable, you want to stop. This is an artistic thing on your part. You'll notice what's happening is that the colors are becoming more muted and that they're actually starting to blend together. Let me show you what it looks like on the difference in both wings. You can see how brilliant the colors are on this wing here and how muted they are on the right wing. The more scaled, and it looks like it's been used in the desert. Now I'm going to add just a little bit more to the one wing, and then I'll add it to the whole aircraft. Now I'll do the same with the top of the fuselage. And with the tails. Depending on your area of operation is how far you need to go. With our clear flat, we're going to go ahead and seal everything together. I like to think of flat as my great equalizer. Everything comes together and is blended. It becomes a homogeneous effect on the whole aircraft. Blends the top to the bottom. Blends the groundwork. All of our weathering comes together. rock and roll with this. This, just like opening a Christmas present. See how bad we did. I think we can live with that. Gotta attach these little mass weights. I leave these off till the very near the end because they always go flying and get lost easily. Just run it through the hole, just be careful. The reason we use white glue is invariably these are going to get broken off during handling and transit. Plus we need a little bit of time to work with them. I use my ruler along the center line to make sure that the gun sits straight in the gondola. Once I'm sure that it's straight, I'm going to turn it on its side. Pan back. And then I'm going to make sure that it points straight forward, and it does. And I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it on the other side. Put it in the hole. Make sure it's aligned. And make sure it's straight, and it is. It's now got cannons on it. Looking good. Next big part to add will be the drop tank. This one I'm going to use a little bit of super glue on the mount. I want it to be a little bit more tack to it than the other ones. Make sure it sits straight. It's slightly offset like it's supposed to be. Let it sit up for a little bit. And the second one. And the third one. Alright, we're coming down to the final stretches now. We're going to add a little bit of white glue to the recesses here in the canopy. Then we're going to attach the head armor. Our particular airplane has an early type of head armor because it was a younger or an earlier type G6. Let that set up for just a little bit, and we'll do a little bit of touch-up painting after we get it attached. We're going to apply white glue to the outside of the canopy. The reason we use white glue or Elmer's glue is because it provides a strong bond, it dries clear, it doesn't craze or attack the plastic, and it's easily cleaned up with water. And if we do need to remove it, then it's easy just to pull off. You want to add just enough white glue around the outside to get a good mating surface, but not too much so that it squeezes out onto the canopy. It's okay to have some of that ooze out. It's easily taken care of by a cotton swab, a little bit of spit. We're going to go ahead and attach the front section next. This provides the opening for the canopy middle section that rotates to the side. Prior to and attaching the canopy, we went ahead and added some masking tape seat belts. We did this to make the cockpit a little bit busier, make it a little bit more realistic, and to keep it within IPMS rules for being built out of the box. You'll find that they look very nice inside there. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of super glue to the canopy. Now I told you not to add super glue to your canopy because it would fog. Well, if you do it in minute amounts, it won't fog, especially if it has some place to go as far as the fumes are concerned. I'm going to back that up with a little bit of white glue across here. That's going to help provide some strength. Carefully place your canopy down and just using a little bit of accelerator, that'll set the super glue. If you need to, you can support it, the canopy, with a little bit of help there to help the white glue set up. Then just let it set and dry. Attach the antenna with white glue. Use white glue as opposed to a super glue because, first of all, it won't fog your canopy, and second of all, it gives you a little bit of working time with the part. Go ahead and attach it through a pre-drilled hole in the canopy. Align it vertically, and you may have to align it left and right. You want to make sure that it stays in alignment with the rudder and the tailplane. You need to attach an antenna, so we're going to use some stuff called Easy Line. Attach it with a little bit of super glue to the antenna mast and touch the Easy Line to the mast. What it does is the Easy Line melts and it's attached in seconds. Go ahead and attach another drop of super glue to the tail, and then you're just going to pull the entire easy line taut but not tight. This allows you a little bit of leadway in case you accidentally hit the antenna during handling, movement, or anything such as that. Just let it wait a few seconds and it's done. You'll need to trim off the excess. I'm using just a pair of scissors here. Pull it a little bit, snip it. If you have a little bit of leftover, like I do, you can do a couple of things. Add a little bit of super glue to the top, and then fold the easy line back over on itself. And if that doesn't work, then what we can do is we can use our Tamiya nippers and cut it really close. You need to add insulators to the antennas. I use white glue. Just go ahead and you can see how I drag it. You want to make sure that it sits even on the line itself. And just like that right there. Go ahead and do it again to the front and drag it. What may end up happening is you'll find you'll have a larger one. So just wait till the small one dries a little bit and go back and touch it up with a little bit more glue. And you're done. Attaching the wingtip lights is fairly easy. A little bit of white glue into the recessed areas, but prior to doing that, make sure that you paint the right wingtip light a clear green and a left wingtip light clear red. Just take your clear part, just like we did for the canopy, and attach it to the wingtip. Line everything up, and then what you want to do is you want to go ahead and clean up with a little bit of water and cotton swab.
And the final part is the propeller. Slips onto its little bushing in there. Twist it around so that it gets a good snug fit.
There it is, it's finished. Our BF-109 G6 from Hasegawa in 1/32 scale. It's built straight out of the box with nothing added short of the Eagle Cow decals. Using the techniques that you've been taught, you can achieve similar results. It may take a little bit of time, it may take a little bit of practice, but you can do it too. Remember, modeling is fun.